or night, good people. My name is Jamel Saladin, and today I want to do a review on Dr. Anthony Browder as he's giving some very informative forbidden knowledge. He's sharing with us the breakdown of some forbidden knowledge. I definitely want to do a review on this information. Before we do that, though, I want to pay some homage to the pioneers, the educational pioneers within our community. I can't do that I can't move on without paying these guys some homage. So the first person I would like to introduce is Dr. Yusuf bin Yochanan. Dr. Yusuf bin Yochanan has passed on, but he was known as, regarded as a highly intelligent Egyptologist and professor of African Studies. All right, if you have not heard of him, please look this man up, Dr. Yusuf bin Yochanan. The next person that I would like to acknowledge, and at some point I will do a video on these gentlemen, but right now I'm just paying homage. That's it, because these are the forefathers that came before even Dr. Anthony Browder that we're going to listen to him in a moment. Dr. Henrik Clark. Dr. Henrik Clark, also a professor of African Studies. Okay? These men were highly regarded by some of the most prolific civil rights leaders, you understand? And even when I went for my bachelor's in school, my professors made sure that I knew who these men were. So just wanted to pay homage to the forefathers of correct education. You know, we were misformed and miseducated, and that is pretty much why we're in, that plays a big part of why we're in the position that we're in right now. This is Dr. Anthony T. Browder, and this is the gentleman that we'll be listening to. I just want to go ahead and cue up the video. Okay, let's just, without delaying too much time, let's go ahead and just start listening to the audio of and the lecture of Dr. Anthony Browder re- giving us the correct information that we were misformed about. Let's go.
Now, what does that mean? Let me give you a reference. And I need to cite this reference specifically in order to pay honor to the brother that recorded it in a book, John G. Jackson, who has since passed on to the realm of the ancestors. The book was entitled Introduction to African Civilization. The citation comes from page 144, and I can still remember how I felt when I read that passage and what it did to me. John Jackson said, in Egypt 3,000 years ago, the birthday of the sun god was celebrated in the temples the 25th of December, 3,000 years ago. Why? Because it was the first day to lengthen, obviously, after December the 21st, the day of the winter solstice. At the midnight hour, on the very first minute of the 21st of December, the birth of the sun was commemorated. At that time, the sun was in the zodiacal sign of Capricorn, which was known as the stable of Aegeus. So the infant sun god was said to have been born in a stable. Shining brightly on the meridian was Sirius, the star from the east. While rising in the east was Virgo, the Virgin, the astrological constellation of Virgo, the Virgin, and the line of the horizon was passing through her center. The whole concept of a virgin birth is written in the stars. To the right of Sirius was Orion, the great hunter, with 3 stars in his belt. And those stars lie in a straight line and point towards Sirius. And in the ancient times, these 3 stars were known as the 3 kings or the three magi. So all of this stuff that has been inculcated into Christian lore was based upon astronomical knowledge that was practiced thousands of years before the birth of Jesus the Christ. So if Constantine had this desire to conquer the rest of the world and to impose a new religious ideology on the minds of the people that he conquered, then one of the first things that he had to do was to ensure that he could minimize people's resistance to this new concept. So he selected a date that they had already set aside as a holiday and imposed his holiday on theirs. After their children died, they will forget the holiday of their ancestors and celebrate the holiday of the people who had just recently mentally enslaved them. So in the winter solstice, or Christmas, the sun is in the southernmost position of the sky. And after that time, it begins to travel northward across the ecliptic, and then at the vernal equinox, or Easter, it passes over the celestial equator. This passing over the sun from the south to the north of the equator was the origin of the festival of Passover. The whole idea of Passover literally talks about the sun, the S-U-N, passing over the equator. All they did was to change the terminology and make the S-U-N the S-O-N, and had the Passover. At that particular point in time, the sun was resurrected in the northern hemisphere. And so it was said that the sun, the S-O-N, was resurrected. That's where all of these concepts and ideas come from. When this event was recorded 3,000 years ago, the sun passing over the equator 3,000 years ago, the sun was situated in the sign of Aries, the ram or the lamb. And so it became a symbol of the sacrificial lamb, the Passover lamb. All of this stuff is directly related to aspects of astronomy. This time of year coincides with the spring equinox, which is also symbolic of the resurrection and the return of life. During the spring, life literally springs forth from the black earth. Vegetation comes back into existence. It is a time of year when birds build their nests and lay eggs, and animals then give birth to the young, which represents a continuation of the life cycle. It is a time of rebirth and regeneration on the earth. There were two prominent symbols that were used in ancient Africa to represent this time, this transformation, this regeneration of life. And those two symbols, particularly symbols that were used in Kemet, were symbols of the egg, which represents the potential for new life that exists within this container, as well as the rabbit. The rabbit was a symbol of abundant birth. Why? Because the rabbits have the ability to produce multiple births in a very short period of time. The rabbit was a symbol that was always associated with fertility. And so it was these two symbols in the newly emerging Christian religion that led to the myth of the Easter bunny and the Easter eggs. Think about it. Rabbits don't lay eggs, do they? What's the significance of that? Why do we every Easter talk about the Easter bunny, hide the Easter eggs? What is that all about? That is us in our ignorance playing out the celebration of the return of the life cycle, which occurs in the spring. Think about Easter. December the 25th is always Thanksgiving. It's always Christmas, correct? December the 25th is always Christmas. But when is Easter? Easter is a movable holiday. Why? Because Easter is always the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. It's all connected to celestial phenomena that takes place in the heavens. It has nothing to do with the story that has been imposed on your subconscious mind. Astrology and astronomy have always been integral elements incorporated within the Christian tradition, but they just never told you the significance of it. You just go along with the program. Just as Easter is always the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox, Christmas is always after the 4 days of the winter solstice. The word solstice means the sun is still. During that 4-day period of time, traditionally from December the 21st through December the 24th, the sun is still. What does that mean? The length of the day does not increase nor decrease significantly. Think about this. Think about how the sun affects your consciousness. In the fall, when you have the fall equinox, which generally falls around September the 21st and September the 22nd, equinox means you have equal night and equal day. 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of nighttime. Then after the fall equinox, the night begins to increase by approximately 1 minute every day. So it gets darker earlier, correct? The nights get longer and longer and longer. The night is symbolic on one level of the unknown. The night on one level is symbolic of death. All right. In the fall, when the sun passes over the equator, and if you live in the northern hemisphere, when the sun passes over the equator and begins to move toward the south, the absence of sunlight leads to the death of all vegetation. That's why we call the season fall. Leaves fall off the tree. Everything dies without the sun, without the light, without the energy that comes from the sun. And things will continue to die as the nights get longer and longer. And so when you come to December the 21st through December the 24th, that 4-day period of the solstice when the sun is still, the length of the day does not increase nor decrease significantly. The sun stops its southern motion and is still in the sky for those 4 days. And during the time that the sun is still, that spiritual energy, that electromagnetic energy that is responsible for the development and maintenance of life is in a special position where it is literally bombarding the earth with a certain level, a certain quality of energy that you all have the ability to tap into and harness if you knew what to do at that particular point in time. After that 4-day period, then on December the 25th, the days begin to increase by approximately 1 minute per day. So then on that day, it was a day of celebration. Why? Because the sun, the giver of life, was born. Very basic reality.
There we have it. There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Dr. Anthony T. Browder. Please look him up. Look up his work. He goes on. He talked about a couple of things there. He talked about the fact that the sun staying still for 3 days and just kind of like concentrating its electromagnetic energy upon us. But if we knew what to do with it, we would benefit, right? And as a practicing magician, one of the things we learn to respect the ideology of property, balance. There has to be a balance there, right? There needs to be a balance with it within your life. But if we don't consider the fact that we are a duality, now when I was talking about balance, I meant just a balance in general. Many of us are extreme to one side or the other, and I feel like there's just in everything, in anything. You understand? And I have to constantly remind myself, Jamel, you need a balance. You need a balance. So it's a practicing thing. It's not like you have the knowledge, you learned something, and then that's it. I'm good because I know. No, nothing. I don't think anything's like that. Everything that the first of all, my people perish because they lack the knowledge, right? And then God forbid you being taught a false narrative, right? Like we just discovered about Christmas and Easter. There are people that knew the whole time the real knowledge, but they gave us some made up version, garbage, if you will. Because if you're not going to give me something that is the truth, then you're giving me something that's harming me. It's just like genetically modified food, which a lot of us are eating now, because we've allowed the few hundred people that run the earth to really control the sources of nutrients that we even get our, the food we get our nutrients from. That's a whole different topic, right? But I wanted to plant the seed today. I'm glad I started this conversation in this video. And if you stayed this long, my next video is going to be on the duality of mankind, right? Because we have to accept the fact that we are a spiritual being just as much as we are a physical being. You know, he had spoke on the subconscious and the conscious mind. Dr. Dr. Browder, he spoke on the subconscious and the conscious mind. And the mind is doesn't necessarily mean the brain. And many of us were taught to think that, right? That's because there's a power within you. You are a duality. But as long as you focus on only the physical element of it, you want to lift weights, you want to keep the body good, that's cool. But a lot of us are not feeding our spiritual side. A lot of us are not supporting and even just acknowledging the spiritual aspect of it, which means you can only get half of the benefits or use half of the powers that you have on this earth. Once you really accept the fact that you are a duality, and once you educate yourself on the other part of that reality, the spiritual side, oh, now we're talking about something, right? And the mind is part of that spiritual side. It's not just the physical brain, but it incorporates your conscious and your subconscious, which is not part of the brain, your consciousness. That's going to be on a metaphysical, spiritual level. And this, they even incorporate this in the Bible text, like he said, but then they don't teach you what that means, right? So you're basically given tools, but then you're not shown how to use these tools, right? So that's the equivalent of someone giving you a hammer, right? Because we're all fools on the journey. You ever see the tarot card that and you see a fool and he's about to walk off a cliff and he has his knapsack in the back and there's tools in that knapsack. Those are the essential things that he needs. And here it is that people want to give you the essential tools and they say, here's your essential tools. You don't know how to use these tools. So a hammer's in your tool, right? In your knapsack. But because you don't know how to use it, one day you whip it out and you start using it as a fork and you start using it to eat. And your kids are watching you. So guess what they do? They start using the same hammer as a way to eat, right? And the people that know how to use the tools, they just watching you and say, interesting. Real interesting. And then they go off and they use the tools the right way to build their reality, to build their existence. And their existence seems like, yo, how is it coming out so great for you? Because I'm using the right tools to build my reality and manifest my reality. And you're over there doing silly business. We're watching you. You don't know what to do. It's not your fault, but it's not my place to tell you how to use the tools. You understand? So when you read your verses and your chapters and the texts in the Bible, It gives you a hint on how to use these tools. It says one of the verses says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Now I want you to think about that verse for a second. As a man thinketh. You was thrown off because you heard the word think and you went straight to the brain. But then it tells you immediately after that, in his heart. Why would it say that? Why wouldn't it say, as a man thinketh in his brain? Why wouldn't it just say, as a man thinketh, so is he? It explicitly says, as a man thinketh in his heart, which gives you an indication that the mental faculties and the phenomena of thought does not only include the brain, but extends externally to something more metaphysical, which would include the conscious and the subconscious, right? Um, and while we're here, I'm just going to keep on going while I got a few minutes. I didn't want to make this video too long, but let's see. We're at 21. Let's just keep on going, right? So if we break down the spirit itself, and some of us, we're going to call this the soul, right? And these are just concepts that I want to share with you. These concepts, I have not developed these concepts. These concepts are actually part of the Kabbalah ideology, right? So the highest level of the spirit and the superconscious mind is called the neshama. Its element is fire, and it corresponds to the heavens, right? So the heavens up above. It is intimately tied to the physical body, bases, urges, reflexes, and instincts in survival. This is actually incorrect. I can tell you that right now. So I'm not going to teach this right now because that is that is incorrect. My notes must have been off right there. I'm going to leave the video up, but I could tell you right now from reading that that's not correct. So we'll start that video another day. No, I got to correct the notes. I wasn't going to do it in, so everything happens for a reason. That's Zeke Black. I have to call Zeke Black back. All right, so I hope you've learned something from Anthony T. Browder. If you walk away with nothing from this video, walk away with the fact that I want you to research Dr. Yusuf Ben Yochanan, um, legendary Egyptologist and African Studies professor, and also Dr. Henrik Clark, legendary African American and African Studies professor. And now also you can I've introduced you to Anthony Browder as he has broken down the assimilation between Christmas, the astrological um, concept that the ancients have correlated with the 25th and Easter, and how this knowledge was reintroduced to us and repackaged with a different narrative that we still move off of today in 2023, but it is not helping us as a people. If anything, it is damaging us. All right. That being said, my name is Jamel Saladin. Do keep a lookout. Subscribe to the channel because I got to fix those notes and I am going to do a video on the duality of mankind. So now that you know what's coming down the pipeline, I hope you're excited about that. I'm excited. Sorry about that. Let me go ahead and fix that up and I'll try to get that out to you as soon as possible. Do like, do subscribe. Take care.